Hello, and welcome to another look with Christian King. It's been a while since I last recorded, but we have a big fight coming up this Saturday night. We have UFC 226, two title fights, champ versus champ fight. Going to be a great night of fights. I can't wait, and I hope y'all are as excited as I am. So I'm going to jump right into my preview show. As I said, it's been a while since I've been here, but that's okay. I've been really busy with work, so just like last time with my UFC 225 preview show, I have not been watching film or studying or making any notes, so I'll skip over a few fights. I don't want to give any disingenuous analysis, and we're just kind of going to bang these out. I'm going to look at the best at bestfightodds.com. And go up the card, and I'll point out some odds. Keep in mind, all those odds will change throughout the week. Got a little iced coffee here, just relaxing and just putting something together, pretty casual. So, so going to be kind of like my last one. I'm going to try and kind of get to the point, not take too long on each one of these. So, let's just jump right into it. I'm excited to do this. So, we have Jamie Moyle versus Emily Whitmire. I'm going to skip over that one. This is the Fight Pass preliminary card that starts at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The second fight is Drakkar Klose versus Lando Venata. I'd have to think back to when their last fights were. I believe the Lando Venata's last fight was against Bobby Green, and it was a draw. I believe Lando Venata had a point taken away in the first round for an illegal blow. And Drakkar Klose's last fight was a loss to David Tamor, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to get real quickly into the point of this one. I think Lando Venata is very creative, sometimes a little bit too creative to where he should stick to more fundamentals, but I think that he's the perfect type of guy to frustrate Drakkar Klose, and I think we've seen that Drakkar can be frustrated. He seemed very frustrated against David Tamor. He was looking to the ref to force David Tamor to fight how he wanted to fight. He seems like the type of guy who can get frustrated, so I'm going to take Lando Venata winning this one. I'm going to go with unanimous decision. Let's look at the odds. Okay, so the odds for this fight is Drakkar Klose is the underdog, as high as plus 164, and Lando Venata is the favorite as, let's see, I guess the best odds to get him at would be minus 169 as the favorite. I'm going to take him by decision. Let's get into the next fight. Okay. We have, now the tricky thing about this is I'm going to have to make sure that I at some point go back and listen to this and take notes, so when I'm doing my recap show, I don't forget who I picked. So that might get a little tricky, but I'm just going to keep going fast. I don't want to take too many notes or anything. So next up we have Gilbert Burns versus Dan Hooker. Now Gilbert Burns had a fight canceled recently, if I'm not mistaken, because he showed up on Monday of fight week at 186 or something insane like that, so like 30 pounds weight to cut in less than like 5 days, so he was ruled not able to fight. Dan Hooker's coming off a knockout win in the first round by knee over Jim Miller. I'm going to go with Dan Hooker on this one. I think he might even stop Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns cuts a lot of weight. I think he gets tired in his fights. He's very good grappling, but Dan Hooker's a tricky guy to get a hold of, and I just feel like Dan Hooker's on a roll right now. I feel like he's confident and he's looking sharp, so I'm going to take him by third round finish. Maybe looking for that knee of death. So let's look. Dan Hooker's the favorite. So far I'm picking favorites, which is okay. I'm just giving you my honest assessment before I look at the odds, so I'm not basing this off the odds. But you can find Dan Hooker at minus 127. And you can find Gilbert Burns as high as plus 120. So far the two fights I've gone over, I wouldn't bet on either one of those. It's just you're not going to make enough money on it. But if you want to throw a couple bucks here and there, I've got Dan Hooker winning this one for sure. I don't have any prop bets available. I still have not had any luck finding prop bets anywhere. So I don't know if anyone listening in the comments, if you're listening to this, maybe you do a little betting. If you've got anything for me, drop it in the comments section so I can try and figure out where to get these prop bets, because I can't seem to find them anywhere reliable. All right, so let's move on into the next fight. All right, next up, that was the main event of the Fight Pass preliminary card. Next up, on the opening bout of the Fox Sports 1 preliminary card at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, We have Max Griffin coming off a win by unanimous decision with dropping him multiple times over Mike Perry. So Max Griffin looking good in his last fight. He's taking on Curtis Molinder, who's a new top prospect. He might have come off of the Dana White's Tuesday Night Contenders. I'm not sure where he came from, but I know that he finished Thiago Alves in his last outing, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not too sure what to really think of this fight, so I'm not going to get into it too much. I think it should be a fun fight, but I need to see more of Curtis Molinder before I really know how this is going to match up, and I'm a little bit unclear. Max Griffin seemed to capitalize on a overtrained, overworked Mike Perry, who I think has been fighting too many times and needs to take his foot off the gas a little bit. So he kind of capitalized on someone who was a little run down, maybe a little bit injured. Not that he didn't fight a good fight, but I'm just not too sold on Max Griffin as a top welterweight. I don't know enough about Curtis Molinder, so I'm actually going to abstain from picking this one because I would just be being disingenuous. So let's look at the odds on that one just in case anyone's curious. I'll keep it quick. We have... Let's see. Max Griffin is the underdog. You can find him as high as plus 148. And Curtis Molinder is the favorite. You can find him as low as minus 162. I guess that sounds right. I just don't really know what to think on that one. So like I said, I'm not going to make a pick. Next up, we have Rafael Assunção, a very just criminally underrated top bantamweight in the world. He's taking on Rob Font. So Rafael Assunção, if I'm not mistaken, he's coming off... man, I need to stop saying that. That's what I say for everyone. So unless I am wrong, he is coming off of a knockout win over have to think who it would be. I believe the guy trains with maybe Justin Gaethje and Trevor Whitmire, if I'm not mistaken. But he recently knocked out a young up-and-coming guy, I think Matthew Lopez, I believe. And he had that really cool thing where he knocked him down and then could have landed that one more punch and saw that his opponent was out and didn't land it. He's a very respectful martial artist, very old-school kind of guy. He's taking on Rob Font, who's a dynamic guy who's coming off a finish of Thomas Almeida. Rob Font is a whirlwind of destruction, but he also tends to leave himself out there. I'm going to have to go with Rafael Assunção taking this fight by decision. I just feel like Assunção is he's that good old reliable guy. Like he's not, I don't know. Maybe we could compare him to a Honda. You get a Honda Civic. It's not as flashy as a Jaguar, but the Jaguar is going to be in the shop all the time and it's going to have problems. And that Honda is just going to keep on running. You can run that thing to 200,000 miles and it's still going strong. That's how I see Rafael Assunção. He's just a reliable guy. I'm a big fan of him, so I'm going to take him by unanimous decision. Rafael Assunção is the favorite. Wow, I'm picking all favorites. Rafael Assunção is the favorite at as low as minus 162. Same as the last favorite. I didn't get those numbers wrong, trust me. And then you can find Rob Font as... as high as plus 150. That'd be the best odds on him. All right, so here's the deal. Next up, we have a little tricky thing, so I'm going to give you all the backstory. We have the dreaded TBA, to be announced, if you're not into those acronyms or whatever you call that. And TBA, the fearsome, undefeated TBA, has taken on Mike Perry, who we mentioned a little bit ago, talking about Max Griffin. So here's the thing about that. I don't know why it still says TBA. I think it's Paul Felder. Now, I've been really busy at work. I haven't been up to my MMA news quite as much as usual. Usually I'm very good at it. Also, too, Ariel Helwani moving to ESPN has thrown me off a little bit because I'm used to going to MMAfighting.com and all of his scoops are coming in on ESPN and I keep forgetting that's where he's at, so I keep forgetting to check ESPN. As far as I know, so what happened is Iaquinta, who can't make up his damn mind whether he wants to fight or not, he keeps changing his mind about whether he wants to fight, and frankly, I think he should just retire. Sorry, Iaquinta. I mean, yeah, you're fun to watch, but I don't care about you enough for you to be playing Conor McGregor games and always changing your mind about whether or not you're fighting. Just go retire and sell real estate. I could really care less, man. And all respect Iaquinta. He's a fun fighter, but that's ridiculous. It's disrespectful to Paul Felder and all those guys just be constantly given the run around. Iaquinta was supposed to take on Gaethje, and then he decided, I'm not getting enough money. I shouldn't have agreed to that, so he backed out. I'm sick of that. Go retire and sell real estate, man. So then what happened is they took away James Vick, who was supposed to be fighting Paul Felder in a couple weeks, and they gave James Vick to Justin Gaethje, and I believe that fight's for August. So then Paul Felder's like, what the hell, man? In Brooklyn, Conor McGregor caused a scene with the dolly throwing, and Michael Chiesa got taken off the card, and therefore, so they messed up Michael Chiesa, but the main thing is that it messed up, then Max Holloway couldn't make the weight. Long story short, Paul Felder ended up without a fight because the only guys left would have been him and Anthony Pettis and their teammates. So Paul Felder keeps getting screwed, but I believe he's stepping up a weight class to fight Mike Perry. So I think Paul Felder is the one fighting Mike Perry on this card. I could be wrong, but if that's the case, I'm actually going to go with Paul Felder. He may be smaller, but I think he's more technical, and I think Mike Perry just isn't improving at the rate he could be if he was training more and fighting less. All respect to Mike Perry, and he could catch Paul Felder with a monster punch, but Felder seems to be a really durable dude. He's a tough guy, and I think he's the more skilled fighter. So I'm going to go with Paul Felder, possibly getting the finish. I'm going to go with Paul Felder by third round TKO. Let's see if that's the fight. Let's go to bestfightodds.com. Well, they still have Yancy Medeiros listed for Mike Perry. Yancy Medeiros got injured and is definitely not fighting Mike Perry. So I guess I don't have odds on that fight right now, but if it is Paul Felder like I think it is, I'm going with Paul Felder, third round TKO, and I'm thinking he might be an underdog, so maybe that's an underdog pick for you. All right, let's move on. Let's get to the point. All right, preliminary card, main event. Paulo the Eraser Costa, or Bohashinia, as they called him before he tried to Americanize his nickname a little bit. Personally, I think you should keep your culture. And, I'm not going to go off on too much of a tangent, but part of, if you listen to my here's why you should be an MMA fan video, part of what's so cool about MMA is the culture and the diversity. Man, if your nickname's Bohashinia and people need to look up to learn that means the eraser, keep that cool name. You don't need to Americanize it for me. I mean, I'm a red-blooded American. I'm all about America. Never left the country yet. I hope to one day to go travel and see some other parts of the world, but I'm an all-American type of guy, and I love the different cultures of MMA, and I love the different cultures of soccer. I love watching this World Cup so far, and I wish he would have kept his nickname the way it was, but that's too much of a tangent on that already. So Paulo Costa taking on Uriah Hall, the veteran who has a salty record of 13-8, but I think he's a little better than that record shows. But he has a little bit of trouble putting stuff together, and I think he has a little bit of trouble mentally. He's a very interesting guy, very artistic guy, and I think maybe he struggles a little bit to get in that competitive zone. And one thing he's talked about is that he has a little bit of trouble with the idea of hurting someone, which sounds hilarious when you're talking about a professional fighter, but he's a true martial artist, and I don't think he loves hurting people, and that's tricky. That's something that I can understand. It's always, it's been a little weird for me when you're sparring hard with someone and you like them. You can't, I don't know, for someone like me at least, it does kind of come into your mind just a little bit, like as you're hitting someone that, man, I actually like this person. Like, I don't have anything against them, and so why would I want to hurt them? So, not everyone's just a total killer, but Uriah Hall is a total killer when he turns it on. So the thing about this is Paulo Costa could very likely just overwhelm Uriah Hall at this point. Uriah Hall is getting up there in age. Let's see how old he is if we can find it. He's 33, not too old actually. I thought he was a little bit older than that. And Paulo Costa, if I'm not mistaken, is in his maybe early to mid 20s. He's 27, so not too bad of an age gap there, but Paulo Costa is a scary, muscly dude who looks like he might be on steroids, but has not failed a drug test yet. I think Uriah Hall's more experienced, but I'm just going to go ahead and say, as much as I hate to make this pick, I don't think the experience is going to be enough. We saw Uriah Hall get blasted out of the first minute of his fight against Derek Brunson, and I feel like Paulo Costa can do that same thing, but maybe even make it look a little better. So I'm taking Paulo Costa by first-round knockout, and I hate to say that. I will be rooting for Uriah Hall for sure, but I think he's going to get knocked out, unfortunately. Let's go look at those odds. Paulo Costa. This is why it's fun to look at these odds first thing. Paulo Costa is as big of a favorite as minus 465. That's insane. You can find him at minus 437 if you were a total idiot and wanted to make a bet on that. Don't bet on this fight unless you're going to take Uriah Hall. If you're going to take Uriah Hall, you can find him at plus 373. I think he could potentially get a decision if he plays it really smart, but unfortunately, I see him getting knocked out in the first round. All right, next fight. We have Khalil Roundtree versus Gokhan Saki. Gokhan Saki may only be 1-1 in MMA, but he's a legendary kickboxer. I don't know enough about kickboxing to go into too many details of all his accomplishments, but I know he's a very good kickboxer, and he had a very exciting MMA debut. And Khalil Roundtree's not really the type of fighter that I am a big fan of. He's kind of just a big guy who tries to get people out of there and then seems to get tired and sloppy. I think Gokhan Saki, he had a little bit of cardio issues for just a second there, and you could see it was right at that 3-minute point in his debut fight. So what happened with Gokhan Saki in his debut fight is that right at the 3-minute mark of the first round, he started looking a little tired. The reason for that, I believe, is that kickboxing fights have 3-minute rounds. I think by now he's had enough time training. He is coming off an injury. I believe it was a knee injury that pulled him out of his actually the same fight. They rebooked this fight for a while later. I think Khalil Roundtree's fought again since then, but Gokhan Saki has obviously not. He had knee surgery, if I'm not mistaken. But I think he can win this fight. I think he's had enough time now training MMA and getting used to the structure of the rounds and the pace of the fight. I think he's going to win this fight, and I think he's going to knock Khalil Roundtree out in the second round. That's what I've got. I've got Gokhan Saki by second round knockout. Let's take a look here. Gokhan Saki is the favorite, as low as minus 137. That'd be the bet to take if you wanted to. I wouldn't recommend it. I'll let you know if I see something worth betting on. So far, the only thing I've seen worth betting on is Uriah Hall at plus 373 would be worth maybe a small bet. And if I'm not mistaken and Paul Felder does turn out to be the underdog, I'd put a bet on Paul Felder. So Gokhan Saki's the favorite. Minus 137 is the best you can get him at. Khalil Roundtree, you can get him as high as plus 130. Don't bet on that fight. Okay, next fight. We got Anthony Pettis, Michael Chiesa taking on Anthony Pettis. Michael Chiesa's higher ranked at this point. So Pettis was the Wheaties box champ. He was on the Wheaties box, only MMA fighter to ever be on the Wheaties box. And then he just kind of fell off. He's had a rough run. He's very injury prone. He's always getting hurt, unfortunately. He's very talented, but he struggles when he gets pressured, and he just struggles getting out wrestled and controlled and backed up against the fence. He needs space to work, and he needs time to work, and people, they don't give him that. He's kind of been figured out at this point is what I'm getting at. Rafael dos Anjos figured him out, and then after that fight, other people were able to figure him out. Clay Guida was the first one, I believe, to figure him out, but that was more of just grappling. But Rafael dos Anjos put the pressure on him, landed huge body kicks. Then Eddie Alvarez out-wrestled him. The only fight where he's gotten the fight he wanted and lost has been, I believe, Edson Barboza and Max Holloway, but that Max Holloway fight, he had a terrible weight cut, trying to go a whole weight class lower. So, I don't think that was the best of Anthony Pettis. But bottom line here, Anthony Pettis is not going to get the fight he wants against Michael Chiesa. Michael Chiesa is very durable. He's very, very tough. He has okay striking. He tends to get hit a lot, but he's a big guy. He's tall. I think it's going to be hard for Anthony Pettis to get a big head kick up there. I don't think Pettis can knock him out with anything other than a big head kick. And I think Michael Chiesa is going to pressure him, fluster him, piece him up a little bit, and end up getting a submission. I'm gonna say Michael Chiesa is going to win this fight by second round submission. Probably a rear naked choke. He is the RNC king after all. Although I guess Kevin Lee, my favorite fighter in this division, Kevin Lee, I guess he took that title away from him. But in fairness to Chiesa, he also didn't tap, and the ref stopped the fight. Now, I don't think he would have survived, but you let the man tap. And then also, he did get elbowed very, very illegally in the back of the head by Kevin Lee. That wasn't the best. That was a little bit of a sloppy, crazy one-round fight. So that one got a little dirty there, not intentionally, but so, that wasn't his best showing. I'm going to go with Michael Chiesa, though, second-round submission, rear naked choke. Let's look at the odds. Wow, this is way closer than I thought it would be. I thought Anthony Pettis would be a much bigger underdog than this. He hasn't had very many good performances as of late in his career. But you can get Michael Chiesa as low as minus 157, and you can get Anthony Pettis as high as plus 143. I would put a little money on Michael Chiesa if you want to, but that's really just not enough of a Well, actually, sorry. That's good for you if you're betting on Michael Chiesa. The fact that they're putting the odds closer than I think, that's good since he's the favorite. So I would consider putting a little bet on Michael Chiesa. If I had any money to spend right now, I just got my condo a new HVAC system, so I spent all my money. If I had money to spend, I probably would be putting a little bit of a bet on Michael Chiesa. As always, and I think this goes without saying, guys, don't get addicted to gambling. Don't be stupid. I'm talking about having a little bit of fun. I'm not talking about putting your rent money on the line. So please don't ever listen to this and think that I'm encouraging people to be irresponsible with their money. I'm literally talking about putting $5 on a fight. When you put $5 on a fight, it makes it a lot more exciting to watch, and it's fun. But I'm talking about betting on it like you would bet on a game of poker with your friends. We're not talking about putting your rent money on the line. So just hope that's clear. If anyone doesn't think that's clear, then you might already have a gambling problem. Okay. Next up, we have Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou. Oh, buddy. These are two huge heavyweights who hit very, very, very hard. Neither one of them are going to be looking to grapple. This is just going to be a slobber knocker, except for the fact that it might not last long enough to be a slobber knocker. So I think kind of the first guy to land really clean could very likely get the win. But here's my thought. We've seen Derek Lewis get stopped. People forget that because it's been a while, but he got stopped by Mark Hunt with a lot of body work combined with his injured back that he was dealing with. But Derek Lewis got flattened in the first round by Matt Mitrione back when Mitrione was in the UFC. He got knocked out bad. So I got to say, Francis Ngannou surely hits harder. And I also think Francis Ngannou can take a shot better. So I'm going to be cheering for the Black Beast Derek Lewis. He's got hilarious Instagram. He is a very likable guy. He's been through a lot in his life and really turned it around, went from being in prison to being married to a school teacher. He's got a great family. Not that Francis Ngannou is a great guy, and he came from digging in the sand mines somewhere in Africa. So he had a rough childhood, talking about rough childhoods. But, Derek Lewis, he's Houston, Texas. I got to cheer for him. I love him. I think he's funny. I think he's fun to watch. And, he just seems like a good guy. And not that Francis Ngannou doesn't, but I got to root for Derek Lewis here. Unfortunately, I think he's getting knocked out in the first round. I'm going to go with Francis Ngannou first round knockout, but I'm going to be cheering for Derek Lewis. Let's look at these odds. All right, we have Derek Lewis at plus 325. Big underdog there. Once again, I'm talking $5 bet. I'm talking your Starbucks drink on the line, not your rent money. But I would consider putting a little $5 bet on Derek Lewis here just for the excitement of getting to watch this and being that much more into every punch and kicks. So, probably won't be many kicks, so into every punch. Then we've got Francis Ngannou. You can get him at minus 365. At heavyweight, you don't really want to bet on favorites that are that big of favorites because you never know what'll happen. And you just never know what'll happen in any fight, but especially in a heavyweight fight. All right, so okay, I'm going to get a sip of iced coffee, and then we're going to move into the co-main event and the main event. So this is coming right up. All right, guys. We have Max Holloway, the UFC undisputed featherweight champion of the world, taking on Brian T-City Ortega, a.k.a. the whitest Mexican you will ever know. I'm kidding, but actually I'm not really kidding. Other than Canelo, who has red hair, Brian Ortega is a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, baby-faced pretty boy who's Mexican. It's very confusing, but I guess, just because you're Hispanic doesn't mean you're going to have brown eyes and darker skin. So it's really funny. He makes jokes about it. He's like, I know I look really white, but I'm straight up Mexican. My dad crossed the border when, before I was born, and then brought my mom over here after that. Brian Ortega has a very interesting story. And he's also doing some work with the Ortega Foundation, looking to sponsor kids, not just for things like jiu-jitsu, which is his passion, but also for art or, track and field, anything where you've got a kid in a rough situation. He's teamed up with Robert Downey Jr., who's, of course, Iron Man, and obviously in the movie, not in real life, but so he's teaming up with some real celebrities to get this foundation going. I think it's great, but I also think that's a little bit of a distraction. And I did hear in the interview him say, I can't wait to get this fight out of the way so I can go back to working on my foundation. Man, that strikes me as, I mean, that's great that he wants to help people, but you're taking on Max Blessed Holloway, who is the man at 145. He has stopped Jose Aldo in back-to-back fights after winning the interim championship by stopping Anthony Pettis. I believe he is on a 10 or 11 fight win streak, maybe even 12, something crazy. He's on a huge win streak. He and Tony Ferguson are the two crazy win streak guys right now. Holloway's on a huge win streak, and I really hope that Brian Ortega is just saying that to help make sure people don't forget about his foundation, because he has no time to be worrying about his foundation right now. Charity's great, but you can do a lot more charity work if you're the champion. That'll get your charity a lot more attention. So I hope he's focused on this fight. With that being said, I will have to cheer for Max Holloway in this fight personally, just because I'm a huge Holloway fan. But let's get into, I've kind of been breezing through these fights because there hasn't really been any to give a lot of talk about. Let's get into this one for a minute. And once again, I haven't done any film study. I haven't taken any notes. No one else has released any pre-fight breakdowns yet, or at least that I've been able to find. So, I like to listen to, a few different shows, but they all come out usually, the Thursday, 2 days before. So this is really just off the cuffs, and this isn't going to be perfect analysis. I'm not a professional coach, but I'm going to try and get into these two fights a little bit. So Max Holloway and Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega has much improved striking. He has a very solid chin. He does most of his work with boxing, not a whole lot of kicks. And Brian Ortega has incredible grappling, and in particular, he has he said he's got a very good triangle, but I don't envision him ending up on his back with Max Holloway in his guard. So for the sake of this fight, we're going to talk about his snap downs, his front headlock series. I mean, that's what you call it in wrestling. I guess he talks about it in jiu-jitsu terms, but essentially, you're in big trouble if he gets your posture broken. If you're in the clinch with him and he gets your posture broke down to where you're slumped forward and he can start wrapping up your neck, getting one of your arms in there, he'll jump guillotine in a heartbeat. We saw him do that in the Cub Swanson fight. Also, he almost finished Cub in the first round with, I believe it was like a darce, but got him down and just started wrapping him up like a boa constrictor. Brian Ortega's jiu-jitsu is dangerous. But he also has good striking, and he has a very good chin. But here's the thing. Max Holloway has improved in the grappling department a lot over the years, and most of all, he doesn't really tend to get taken down. And he's also taller. They're both tall for featherweights, but Max Holloway's taller, and he keeps a really good range, works a really good jab. He has dangerous weapons if you get in on the inside with him. He'll throw some good uppercuts and some good elbows. So I think Max Holloway is not going to end up in too much danger like a shorter fighter like Cub Swanson did with that front headlock series. I think Max Holloway is going to be able to keep this into a striking match. And when you get into a striking match, Brian Ortega does have a good chin, but Holloway doesn't put you away with one big shot. He overwhelms you and starts making you make worse and worse decisions, and your reactions are getting, he's reading your reactions, and he's beating you to what you're trying to do. Holloway, he has a very diverse game where it's like he can change it up depending on who he's fighting. He fought Ricardo. See, this is where it'd be great to have some notes. He fought Ricardo Lamas, I believe, entirely in the southpaw stance, and then fought Jose Aldo entirely in the orthodox stance. And he switched a lot against Anthony Pettis. I may have those two backwards. It could have been that he fought Aldo in the southpaw stance and what was the other guy I just said? Ricardo Lamas in the orthodox. I could have mixed those two up, but my point is he just changes his game up based on who he's fighting. He adds different weapons based on who he's fighting. He's very diverse. He's very adaptable. And I just think that if Holloway can keep this a striking match, which I think he will, I think the fact that he has more weapons and he's more just consistent, I think, on the feet than Ortega. I think that Holloway will be able to win the striking exchanges, and I think he'll be able to stay safe while continuing to put pressure on Brian Ortega and wear him down. I guess I'll cut to the chase. I'm taking Max Holloway to win this fight, and I'm taking him to win it by decision. He was able to stop Jose Aldo twice. He was able to stop Anthony Pettis, but Anthony Pettis is not as durable at 145 with a terrible weight cut in which he missed weight as he's going to be at his natural weight class of lightweight 155. And Aldo, I think Ortega, it's not that Ortega's tougher than Aldo, it's that Ortega doesn't have the miles. Talk about miles you put on a car, that wear and tear. Ortega doesn't have the career miles on him that Jose Aldo does. So I think that just the fact that Ortega's fresh and young and hasn't taken a lot of damage in his career will enable him to hang in there for 5 rounds. But I think Holloway is going to win possibly all 5 of those rounds. I think at least 4. I think it's going to be a pretty clear, unanimous decision, kind of a little bit of a shutout. And I think Brian Ortega will have to go back to the drawing board and keep learning. But I could be totally wrong. I mean, obviously, I'm not. I can't predict the future, and even though I can't predict the future, I'm not even a professional coach or anything. So I'm not the guy to give you a 100% solid answer on this. But that's what I'm saying. I'm saying Max Holloway's going to win this by shutout, unanimous decision, and I'm sticking with it. Let's look at the odds. All right, we have Brian Ortega. Wow, these odds are close. They're closer than I would think. We've got Max Holloway. Best odds on him are minus 145. That's absolutely worth a little bet. Maybe $5 or $10. Definitely worth that at minus 145. And then once again, just for fun, you're not going to make a lot of money on close fights, but they are fun to bet. And then we can get Brian Ortega as high as plus 135. Now, obviously, I've already told you what I think, so I wouldn't waste my money betting on Ortega, but hopefully it'll be a really, really great, entertaining fight. Oh, and actually, as I was talking about that, some new odds just popped up, or maybe I just noticed them for the first time. They've got Mike Perry, Yancy Medeiros below. That fight's not happening, but now I just saw at the top of the page, Mike Perry versus Paul Felder. So Paul Felder is the underdog Paul Felder's the favorite. Okay, so you can get Mike Perry at plus 119, or you can get Paul Felder at minus 135. I wouldn't bet on Felder if he's a favorite. That was an underdog type of idea, so don't bet on that fight. All right, so we took Max Holloway. So like I said, that I would throw a couple bucks on Max Holloway if you're feeling frisky. He's my pick to win this by pretty clear cut unanimous decision. All right, so let's get into the final fight. This is for all the marbles. This gives Daniel Cormier, one of my very favorite fighters, the opportunity to become the second double champ in UFC history. Of course, the first being Conor McGregor. But I will say, Daniel Cormier will be the more impressive double champ, in my opinion, because he's actually defended his light heavyweight title, fought multiple times at heavyweight, had a 13-0 undefeated record before dropping down to light heavyweight in the first place. And now he's coming back up. And I look at this as such a fun story. Daniel Cormier is coming up to reclaim what could have been his years ago. That's the way I look at the dynamic of this fight, and I love it. I'm so excited. So get excited if you're not already excited, people. Daniel Cormier coming back up to reclaim what could have been his. He met Cain Velasquez. He was training Cain Velasquez. He got into MMA. He was killing it at heavyweight. Strikeforce Grand Prix champion, running through the UFC contenders, and then realized that he was not willing to fight his good friend and teammate Cain Velasquez. So, like the team captain of AKA, that American Kickboxing Academy, that he made the sacrifice. Despite him and Cain being very, very similar in size and build, he made the sacrifice and went on the kale shakes and the quinoa and cut down to light heavyweight 205. And he became the champion there. And other than John Jones, he's had amazing success. And those John Jones fights have some serious asterisks next to them. People say that that's an excuse, blah, blah, blah. There's a reason why some guys don't ever fail drug tests for anything. No tainted supplements, no nothing. It's because they're not messing with anything. Even if it's a tainted supplement, you're on that gray area where you're clearly doing something other than taking, BCAAs and protein powder. you're messing with some stuff. So to me, I give Daniel Cormier a little bit of a pass on those fights. Not to mention Jon Jones is arguably the greatest fighter of all time. Definitely the greatest fighter of all time if you take away his indiscretions with his personal life in USADA. So come on. I mean, so if he has lost twice, technically only once in the record books, but if he has lost twice, he's lost to the best guy in the world. So let's not put Daniel Cormier down for that. But Stipe is the constantly overlooked Cleveland, Ohio firefighter. He is that guy who, I mean, that sums him up pretty well right there. The dude still is a firefighter. He still does that, and he's the heavyweight champion of the world. And his response is, well, I worked so hard to pass all the firefighter and EMT tests. Why would I not keep doing it? Okay, man, you clearly have a work ethic that I do not possess, because that's crazy. But Stipe Miocic, constantly being overlooked, but we're not overlooking him here. Stipe is dangerous. He's he's a little bit younger than DC by 4 years. He's 35, DC's 39. Stipe is much taller. He's Daniel Cormier is 5'11" and has a 72-inch reach. And I actually just remember these. I'm not even looking at this, so that's kind of funny. Stipe has an 80-inch reach, and he's 6'4". They'll come in about the same weight. Obviously, Daniel Cormier will have that lower center of gravity. He's more compact. Stipe is a lot more athletic looking. He kind of looks like maybe he's built kind of like maybe just a little bit thicker than like a point guard you would see in the NBA. You know, he's not a super tall guy, but he's definitely built very athletically. There's not really any body fat on him. But, the way your body looks isn't what determines who wins a fight, so that's a little beside the point. So, this fight is obviously taking place at heavyweight. Daniel Cormier is the one who has the opportunity to become double champ. Stipe, this is just another title defense. Now, in his last fight, he took out Francis Ngannou. Not took him out. He smothered him and wore him down for 5 rounds. It was an amazing performance. So he beat the record. He's defended his heavyweight title 3 times, which, believe it or not, that's the record, because it is hard to stay champ at heavyweight when one punch can knock you silly when you don't see it coming. Or even if you do see it coming, it can knock you silly. So Stipe, constantly underrated, criminally underrated, going for his 4th title defense, which would further cement his legacy and further distance himself from the rest of the pack of UFC heavyweight champions. But Daniel Cormier is coming up, and he's here to stop that. So here's the thing. I haven't looked at the odds yet, but I can go and tell you Stipe is definitely going to be the favorite. He's just, he's the heavyweight champion. Daniel Cormier is the guy who's coming up. Daniel Cormier is smaller. Doesn't hit as hard. He's older, et cetera, et cetera. But I just think Daniel Cormier he's got that special grit and determination. And I'm sure Stipe has it too, but I think being Olympic team captain, being team captain for AKA, wrestling for all of his life, I think Daniel Cormier has a special mentality. And obviously, a fight isn't won purely on mental strength alone. And maybe part of it's just me wanting to believe in one of my favorite fighters. But I'm going with Daniel Cormier here. I think that he can win this fight. I think it will be the toughest 25 minutes of his life. And if he does win, I think it will be a decision. If he loses, I think it will be him getting knocked out in the first 2 rounds. So I'm going with DC. And we'll get to the odds in a minute, but I'm going to give you kind of my essential thoughts on this fight. Daniel Cormier does his best work moving in, pressuring, kind of swaying and dipping side to side, and as he sways to his left and moves his head to the left off that center line, he's throwing his right hand over the top. And then as he sways back to his right and dips his head to the right side, he's throwing his left hand over the top, and he's just kind of bombing on you. That works a lot better. See, Stipe is the perfect size for that to work against. But here's the thing that you might not know if you don't pay close enough attention to fights. Stipe doesn't throw straight punches. His arm is quite often at a 90-degree angle when he knocks people out. He throws punches in short. That's a big problem, and I'll explain why. When Daniel Cormier was bombing on Jon Jones in that second fight before he got caught with that head kick and before Jon Jones got caught with that turn-a-ball, Daniel Cormier was weaving left, right, bombing over the top. Jon Jones was throwing straight punches, and they were going right past where his head would have been if it was in the center. Stipe throws his punches short. He has short range power. When you look at his knockout over Fabricio Verdum, Verdum was pressuring him, not well. He was chasing him, I should say, along the fence line. Stipe knocked him out, moving backwards with a very short punch with like 1 foot on the ground. He just has crazy short distance power. I think that he might be one of those people. See, power is all about how your muscles are connected to your bones, mostly in the tricep area. Obviously, I'm not some crazy scientist, but that's my understanding of how it works as it's been explained to me. Your power has to do with your bones and how your muscles are attached to your bones, mostly in your tricep area. Stipe generates that dangerous short-range power because, I guess, of the way he was born. That's kind of his power. I'm willing to bet that he hits harder with those short punches than with his long punches. Whereas me, I know that if I throw a short punch like Stipe, it doesn't have a lot of power on it. Same way John Jones doesn't have a lot of power, or and lots of other fighters don't. Whereas if I throw a jab and now I've got my body cocked and I come through with a straight right hand, I can land with a respectable amount of power. I'm not a huge hitter, but I can land a respectable, solid punch like that. I can't land a lot of power in really tight with my arms bent. So everyone's different. Stipe has that gift, and here's why that's a big problem for Daniel Cormier. If you're coming in and you're bobbing and you're weaving and you're bombing over the top, you're not staying safe because the punches aren't going straight down the middle and you're dipping off to the side. Instead, those punches are coming in short. So you might roll your head to the left right into a Stipe Miocic trademark 90-degree angle elbow right hook and get knocked out cold. So Daniel Cormier, and I'm sure his coaches and him are aware of this, but that's going to have to be adjusted. Daniel Cormier is going to have to make adjustments, well, I'm sure throughout the fight, but in training camp, to avoid getting caught with one of those short-range power shots that Stipe is known for. So his normal style of that bobbing and weaving and bombing over the top as you enter in is going to put him actually in a lot of danger, whereas usually that approach keeps him safe. Instead, it's actually going to make him in more danger, but at the same time, he can't just sit out on the outside because he doesn't have the range that Stipe has. He can't win just a stand on the outside jab and leg kick battle against Stipe. Stipe will win that all day long. So how does DC win? Well, honestly, a lot of it's going to be luck for DC to win. He's going to have to just not get caught with one of those short-range punches. And a lot of that, I don't care what anyone says, a lot of it is just a little bit of luck. It's a lot of skill, but sometimes you zig when you should have zagged. There's no drill to know exactly where to move your head. If Daniel Cormier is doing a good job moving his head and bombing over the top and he gets caught, does that mean that he's not a good fighter? No, it doesn't. It means that he zigged when he should have zagged. And that's my concern here as someone who's rooting for DC, is that he might zig when he should have zagged, and he might get cracked, and he might get put out. And if so, I think it'll probably be in one of those first 2 rounds, because I think he'll get Stipe a little bit slower as the fight goes on. So Daniel Cormier is going to have to get a little lucky and a whole lot of skill, which he has, and he's going to have to use that, implement that forward pressure, maybe a little bit less of the getting in, maybe back out and reset a little more often than he would in some of his other fights. And most of all, when he does land a good shot over the top, I think he needs to instantly level change and try and just pick up a quick single leg or just a little double, maybe a little knee tap, and just get Stipe down. Even if he can't hold him there for too long, you're scoring points and you're tiring Stipe out. Stipe definitely has great cardio for heavyweight, but his cardio is not as good as Daniel Cormier's. If you're Stipe, and I think DC would win by 5-round decision if he does. If you're Stipe, how do you win this fight? Well, you use that short-range power to constantly threaten when Daniel Cormier pressures you, and whenever he's on the outside resetting, or whenever you can keep him outside, in my opinion, and I'm not a coach, but you should be throwing leg kicks and jabs. You don't need to get crazy. You don't need to miss on a big punch and leave yourself open for a takedown. Stipe has a very stiff jab, and they're wearing little gloves, so a stiff jab can cause a cut. So throw that stiff jab and throw that leg kick. He kicks very, very hard. He has very thick, solid legs, and if he can put some leg kicks on Daniel Cormier, that will make it a lot harder for him to engage in wrestling and pressuring if his leg's starting to go dead on him. So I think if you're Stipe, you do that, and you look to capitalize capitalize throwing a jab, throwing a leg kick, getting Daniel Cormier to where maybe he comes forward and pressures, but not quite on his terms. He's doing it because he doesn't want to get kicked in the leg again, and then you catch him with that short range power. If you're Stipe, that's how you win, in my opinion. If you're DC, you just do DC. You pressure, you get a little lucky not getting caught, you throw shots over the top, you mix it up with takedowns, and you win a very close fought 5-round decision. And if Daniel Cormier can do that, I think he'll run away with the last round, maybe the last round and a half, and that will be enough to really clarify that he won. I'm rooting for DC, no secret there at this point. I think I've said it 50 times on this show. But Stipe, I'm sure, is the favorite, and respectfully so. So let's look at the odds, and then we'll wrap this up. Okay, Daniel Cormier. You can find him as high as plus 220 underdog. You can find Stipe as low as minus 240 favorite. I would consider putting a few bucks on DC here. Like I said, if I hadn't just gotten the new air conditioning system for my house, I probably would be putting $5 or $10 on Daniel Cormier just to show how much I believe in him as a fan. But, the reality is those are good odds. Stipe should be the favorite, but he shouldn't be the craziest favorite you've ever seen. So I respect those odds. I'm not going to argue with them, but I'm picking DC. I'm going Team DC. Embrace the grind, 5-round unanimous decision. That's my pick, and I'm sticking with it. All right, so that wraps up my preview show. I hope everyone has really enjoyed listening to this. I hope everyone has an amazing, happy 4th of July. Make the most of it. Enjoy time with friends and family. And when the week's done and you're recovered from partying and you've already had to go back to work and you're getting bummed out, remember, you got UFC 226 that Saturday night to enjoy. So everyone tune in, watch that fight, pay for the pay-per-view, give these athletes your money, don't illegally stream stuff. It's not cool. And then join me again on Sunday, the 8th, for my full recap show. I can't wait to get back here and talk to y'all. I hope you enjoy.